sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
Welcome to Rabbi on the Sidelines. I'm Rabbi Erez Sherman from Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. On this podcast, we speak about the intersection of sports and faith. We have a very special guest this week, somebody who has been through challenges and has also been to the top of the mountain as well. Coach Matt Sayman from Grapevine Christian School in Texas, originally from Baylor basketball, author of this amazing book, The Leftovers, Baylor, Betrayal, and Beyond, host of the Jamodi podcast, and just an amazing, amazing coach and human being. Coach Matt Sayman, it's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. So as I told you just before, I read your book via a different book. And the first book I read was Coach Scott Drew, which was your college coach at Baylor for just one season in 2004 and 2003, 2004. And then in that book, he speaks about you as the leftover. And for those of you who don't know, we're going to talk a little about Baylor basketball. But before we get to Baylor, your journey to that university, I believe, is just so fascinating. You love basketball and you love faith. Tell us, as a child growing up in Pennsylvania, not in Texas, but in Pennsylvania, how did those two things of sports and faith intersect in your life then?
Well, faith was really important to myself and my family. My parents did a great job of getting us involved in church at a really young age. In fact, I was saved when I was 5. I got baptized, and that was always a driving force in our family. And then 9 years old, I started playing basketball, but then, really realized that I had some natural ability in it. But more importantly, I really enjoyed learning new skills and adding new things. I luckily met some coaches early on that helped me to be really focused and kind of point me in the right direction of how to become a college basketball player. And what happened was that my faith and then that journey to basketball, they kind of start, in my mind, in my family's eyes, it started moving the same direction, where we thought, God is really on board with this plan that I have as a 9-10-year-old. But the biggest thing I think that separated me from some other kids, my friends, was just the focus and the plan that I had to get to that level.
So was it a belief that God had that plan, or did you see it as perhaps a blessing from God that the plan was working?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it was like, God, this is what I want. And if I do the right things, I know that you'll make it happen. Almost like a personal genie. And really, I think if we're not careful, we read about and we talk about idols all the time. And sometimes we can think that, well, that doesn't happen anymore. We don't have wooden images that we're bowing down to, worshiping. But yeah, it's maybe even more dangerous now because you don't even realize that a sport, a job, a relationship can become that for you really quick.
So I've spoken to actually a lot of athletes, coaches, owners, and a lot of broadcasters, and they often speak about, the player that goes like this after the home run or the touchdown, but the left fielder that dropped the ball is not doing that. So when you speak about the genie aspect, it's really fascinating, because if God is going to be on that path, then also perhaps the faith has to be in the other path as well, which we'll speak about in a little while. You had a saying that I believe you learned from a coach. It's Jamodi, if I'm pronouncing that right, Jamodi, and just a matter of doing it. That's how it started. Take us through Jamodi and how that came into your life.
Yeah, it was a camp in 7th grade. I'm from Pennsylvania, like you said before, and I was at a camp going through some ball handling lines, and this coach just kept saying, guys, you got to do this. It's Jamodi. We do a drill a little bit longer. And then he'd say it again. Hey, you know what? I know it's hard, but it's Jamodi. Finally, like, one of the campers had just the guts to say, Coach, what is that word you keep saying? And he said, it's just a matter of doing it. I have no clue who that was. If I ever meet him, I'll say thank you, just because it really did become almost like a personal mantra that I had for working on my game and getting better. And in fact, my workout, I named it Jamodi. Jamodi, I would add new drills to it. It grew to where I had to split it up into Jamodi Day 1, 2, and 3 because it was so large, and I'd kind of rotate through. And just all the way through my kind of playing career and then into coaching, I've used that term that I learned in 7th grade.
And so you took a strange path, because not many kids at basically 10 years old tell their parents, you know what, I'm moving to a place where basketball can be better in Texas. Nowadays, we have the prep schools, maybe a gap year, so you get an extra year under your belt before Division I. But like at 10 years old, you're like, I'm going. And how your parents said yes, and they came with you. How did that happen?
So it is a pretty incredible story. When I talk to players now about how if you're really focused and you tell your parents that you have this goal or dream, but you show them that you're serious about it, I tell them they'll do pretty much anything they can to help you. And I tell from experience. So it was a little bit later, 10 years old is when I had 3 goals: to make my freshman A team, to make varsity as a sophomore, and to get a Division I scholarship to play basketball. And so my dreams, those were my goals. And then all my work ethic, my focus kind of went towards that. And going into my freshman year, one of my first, what I would call real coach, Steve Yoder from up in Pennsylvania, he moved down to the Colony, Texas. And so I came down here to just work a camp with him. And at that camp, I met Tommy Thomas. And Tommy Thomas was this larger than life character. He said, Matt, like, what do you want? I told him my 3 goals. He said, those can happen for you down here. And so I flew back up to Pennsylvania on the way home from the airport, said, Mom, Dad, you know how serious I am about this. I can become a college basketball player if we move to Texas. We talked about it on the way home, asked my little sister, would you want to go? And she said, yeah, let's do it. And then I started about 2 weeks later as a freshman at the Colony High School. So when I say, because later on, when we get into what happened that year, I think sometimes I've thought, like, it's just basketball. Like, why was it such a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because it wasn't just my dream. Like, my parents had sacrificed a lot for that to happen. And so it was kind of the death of like our family's dream, and all the sacrifice and time that they had put in. It's just hard to see it kind of go that direction. But that's how I got down here. And those goals happened right in order. Freshman A team at the Colony, which is a big, public high school down here. Great athletes at the school and played great competition. Made varsity as a sophomore, and then going into my senior year, signed with Baylor.
So let's start a little about your story from Pennsylvania to Texas. We'll watch this clip.
I was obsessed with basketball as a child, and the whole point of working hard and sacrificing was to get to that point where I could play in the dance in March Madness. And going into my senior year at Baylor, all the time and effort and investment was really paying off in a big way. And it really looked like playing in the championship was going to happen for us. And at that point, one of my professors called me and said, Matt, you need to turn on the TV right now.
Baylor University officials.
The Baylor basketball scandal.
The man convicted of killing his teammate, Patrick Dennehy.
I found out that one of my teammates had shot and killed another one of my teammates, and found out that the coaching staff had been doing a lot of things wrong. So basically my entire team dismantled. That day really put me on a path full of pain, broken relationships, and I just threw myself completely into the party scene. And when I would wake up the next day, all my problems were right there.
So let's take a step back on the way to Baylor, because we're the same age. And when I was graduating high school, I knew that my high school career was over. My basketball career was over, but I was going to find a passion with sports the other way. And here you actually had to take it the other way. Now, you said, even during your recruitment, the story was fascinating and beautiful at the time as I was reading your book, that Coach Bliss had a Bible in his car, and he would take you to FCA events, Federation of Christian Athletes, and this faith in basketball at Baylor seemed to be the perfect fit. Maybe take us through that recruiting process just a little, and realizing, wow, this is the place that I can combine these two passions that I have within my family.
I had several offers and a few different colleges that wanted me to come visit. SMU was our first visit, and it's right. I mean, it is 20, 30 minutes from here. So it seemed like I could stay around home and be playing, and my parents would come watch me easily. And I went there, and the campus was beautiful. One of the assistant coaches took me around, but I think I saw the head coach for about 8 minutes total.
Mm-hmm.
And even in that interview, I could tell he actually mentioned, we're interested in one of your teammates from the summer, but if you want to come, like it just didn't feel really wanted at all. And so then we left there with that feeling, went down to Waco, and Coach Bliss met us right outside of the university, right in Waco, and parked our car. When we were getting into his car, my mom remembers I got in the back, she was in the front, but remembers a Bible being right up on the dashboard. And that was a sign to her. Like she had been praying a lot about God showing us the right path for us, the right university to go to, and where for me to play. And it was just incredible how he drove us all around campus, really made me feel like I was the most important recruit that he had. And the way that he was introducing me to everybody on campus, like I could see how proud he was of the program, of what they were doing, how excited he was for me to come be a part of it. Coach Bliss sold me on going to Baylor, because up to that point, I don't think I'd ever been down there in Waco. It's about 2 hours south of where we live, and didn't know much about the university. I knew it was Big 12, which that was a big deal, but had never heard much about it, and fell in love with the university, loved what it stood for. The place where you can be a believer, but not necessarily, they're not hitting everybody over the head with it. It was just a great place to be. And in that final meeting with him, he outlined the offense we would run, how he thought I would be perfect for it. And then he said, I want you to be a pillar of our basketball program. And I mean, what 18-year-old doesn't want to hear that from a coach? And so on the way home, I told my mom, I was like, that's where I want to go play. And she teared up. We both teared up. And she said, oh, I'm so glad. And it was kind of like, I mean, you go back to this 9 or 10-year-old, and when I talk to athletes about how improvement happens, it's never like, here's where I start, and then I just gradually move to where I want to be. That's not how improvement or success happens. Here's where you start. You work hard and you get a little bit better, and then there's some dips in the road, and then at some point it zigzags all over the place. And so it had been difficult. I mean, and we had left all of our family to come down here, and so a lot of pressure I felt on me a little bit to make sure this thing happens, and it just all seemed to be happening the right way.
And so you have a couple of really good years. You're improving, the dips, the roller coaster ride, and then of course this happens. And with Patrick Dennehy, Carl Dotson, and it seems like by reading the book and by many years of hearing this story that there was almost a separation of who you were and then who, I don't want to say they were, but sort of different parts of the team, that you were known on campus as leading a moral and ethical life, but being part of the basketball team. I know it might be hard to recount and emotional, but take us through that moment when you get that call from the professor saying, you got to turn on the news. This is not what you think it is.
I think just one more thing to kind of bring up about why it was so hard. I mean, not just losing a teammate in that, because that is just, it's kind of an unthinkable situation. Like, you're never prepared for that. You never go into it believing that could happen. But like you had said before, we had some good years. I mean, we were really on. I mean, I got to talk to Kelvin Sampson, who's at Houston. Yeah. He was at Oklahoma at the time, and he even talked about how good we were becoming. You know, we had 2 years, my sophomore and junior year, where I'd become a starter, and our record really didn't show how good we were and how competitive we were. But going into that senior year, where we had some juniors that were going to be future NBA players, some really good recruits coming in, strong seniors like myself, R.T. Gwynn, Terrence Thomas, that were role players, but I mean, almost 100 games under our belts at that point. So it did all seem, and this is what Coach Bliss had come to Baylor to do, was to turn this program around. You go, and up to that point, you nailed it. I was known as a believer on campus. I mean, literally known for that. I didn't drink. I didn't go to parties. If I did happen to go to one, people would kind of hide their drinks away from me. They didn't want me to see them that way. You know, I've been really a part of FCAs. I've done a lot of those with Coach Bliss, got to go speak with him and at those events. And that separation ended up helping me once everything kind of happened. I had a good group of friends that weren't basketball players and weren't associated. So going to that afternoon, I mean, it was in June. I just got done, lifting weights and playing sand volleyball. That was kind of my routine during the summer. Stay on campus, be with the strength coach, take some classes so that I could take a lighter load during the season, and then play some sand volleyball. That was our favorite thing to do. I'd go in and, one of my professors called, and this whole story just unfolds right in front of me. Longest 2 months of my life. I still feel that even to this point at 40. And it turns out one of my teammates, I'd shot and killed one of my other teammates. I mean, the guys that had been just a few lockers down from me. Carlton Dotson, actually, the one that did kill Patrick. I would consider us friends, like as far as teammates go. We had similar paths in playing time. We would have games where we play a lot, games where you don't play that much, and we'd kind of be on the bench together, helping each other through that. And I really liked him, and it just didn't seem to me to have the personality that could ever do something like that. So that in itself was when his name was being floated around with doing that, and he had actually already been dismissed from the team. So in our minds, he was already gone, not even could be still around in Waco, and this thing could happen. And when that tragedy happened, they started to look into Coach Bliss a little bit more and do a deeper dive into what had been happening at our school. And this is another part where, I mean, losing Patrick and Carlton was difficult. Patrick, obviously the most. But then also finding out that this perfect, dream world scenario that you find yourself in is actually flawed and corrupt. And I didn't see it. I didn't know it. Like, I didn't know that they were paying players. I didn't know. I thought Patrick was on scholarship. Here's a 6'9" future pro. Who would have ever thought he's a walk-on essentially, and that they were paying for his school? Like, those are just things I just didn't know. And that there was drug use and people were getting out of drug tests. I mean, I never got out of a drug test. I mean, I had to do it, but I didn't get asked to do it very often, and so all of that, this perfect world scenario. So when basketball is kind of stripped away and bad, all of a sudden I'm left with this answer. Okay, if I don't have basketball in my life, what do I really have? And unfortunately, I can't pinpoint the moment in my life where my faith really took a back seat, but I think it took a back seat so far that I didn't see it, or I didn't feel it in my life anymore.
So here's a clip from you talking about one of your chapters in your book about God's plan and a wish, and you really speak about it in reference to getting Division I scholarship, but I want to speak about it in reference to what happened after.
How many people are just wishing that good things happen or that they reach their dreams? I think a lot of people, and it doesn't just have to be sports, have these audacious dreams and goals that are maybe God-given, that they don't actually have a plan to make them happen.
So what happens to the genie of God when the Baylor scandal happens and you see this flawed aspect in the coach where you put so much trust? And I just want to preface that with, and I've said this multiple times on the show, when I was studying to be a rabbi, we had to come up with an analogy or a metaphor of God. And the musicians wrote a song, and the poets wrote poetry, and the artists drew pictures. And I'm a sports enthusiast, passionate for basketball. I wrote as God as a coach and spoke about when good things are happening, that coach is on top of the world. When bad things are happening, it's not necessarily the players, but it's actually the coach. But I didn't have the Baylor moment in mind where what happens if the coach aspect is actually flawed. And it seems like over the years, you try to reach those moments of forgiveness with Coach Bliss until it got to a point where perhaps that redemptive piece wasn't going to happen. So what happens in this moment where maybe God had a different plan, and what is your wish at that moment?
Well, looking back, I wish I would have asked this question. I never did. God, what can I learn from this? Or how can I be used in this situation to glorify you? Not once did I ever ask that. And the me monster just completely took over in that moment where, okay, God, you have, in my mind, made all of this happen, got to me this point, and I've tried to live for you, but really just live good enough and try not to outwardly sin enough to where, I feel like I'll continue to be blessed. And I think a lot of people are living that way, is that, I'll do this if you do this.
Yes.
And so the decision I made at that was, okay, if you're not going to protect me or allow my dream to finish, this goal that I have to finish, which was to make it a March Madness, to have this deep run, all these things. I didn't really have anything past college basketball. I think that's a flaw in our goals, is like, if you're a younger kid and you're dreaming about playing in high school, college, or pro, what else? What else do you have? Because at some
you have
point,
said publicly that it was more athlete student as opposed to student athlete.
Oh yeah,
right.
Definitely there to in my warped mind to provide a service for the students at Baylor. That's how. But you become more kind of what you feel like an entertainer. I have to perform, and I had a specific role on the team as hardcore, do anything hustle guy that will do whatever he can for the team. So you got to live up to that. You got to continue to put your body on the line and to give this incredible effort and to be selfless. And so when you're doing all those things and now all of a sudden they're ripped away, I took control of my life that in that summer. What I mean by that is took control of my peace, my happiness. God, if you're not going to make this happen, then I've got this now. And man, I just didn't realize at that time how much I would lose control over almost every part of my life by making that decision as a 21-year-old.
So you actually talked about having a trust issue with God, and you use a common text within the Christian and Judaic traditions of Moses and Joshua and the spies. You said that your dream was coming close to realize, but it would never see it come true. Moses gets the people to the promised land, and then Moses only sees into it and has to pass it off to somebody else. Maybe speak about who was Moses and who was Joshua in that moment for you.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I think for a long time I thought I was Joshua as far as I'm going to make it. We've fought really hard, and we've gone through so many trials, and 40 years. That's what college basketball can kind of feel like at times. And and I've been faithful, and so I'm going to walk through, and then all of a sudden, because of other people's, and that kind of maybe a similar feel of Moses, because of the rebellion of those people, and then his anger and his mistrust, he's kept out. I think I felt like both of them at times, but ultimately probably like Moses. I think one of the most painful things is when you have a dream and it's about to come true. Like you're about to see it happen, and it doesn't. Like that pain, I think, is worse than your dream just never happening at all. Like not even. Yes. I want to play college basketball. I hurt my leg, and in high school I couldn't do it. That would be tough. But to actually get all the way through to where you're about to, like, I can't imagine what that was like for Moses to be literally peering into this promise, but to not get to be a part of it. I can't imagine. Well, I can't imagine how hard that was, but it was tough for me to feel like this dream now has almost become a nightmare.
It's actually interesting that you say that, because within synagogues around the world this week, we read the next portion where Moses hits the rock and he's not allowed into the promised land because of that. But when you think about the reasons why he hits the rock as opposed to speaks to it to get water, it's because of the other people and how one person's dream is affected because of the actions of others as well. Have you been to the promised land of Israel yet?
I have not. I would love to, though.
We got to do that together on the Sports and Faith mission.
Yeah. Do you do that? Do you take people over?
Absolutely. Actually, in 2 weeks, the Maccabean Games, basically the Jewish Olympics around the world, occur in the land of Israel. Actually, Coach Pearl is taking the Auburn team for their European trip to Israel this coming summer as well.
Wow.
So we're excited to, and it's an amazing land of faith, and sports, and specifically basketball, is really coming up more as well.
Oh yeah.
So the dream is not realized, but you become a leftover, and you put yourself in that position. You could have quit. Other people left. You were sort of too old to leave, and you were stuck.
Yeah.
And Coach Drew comes in with a new administration. In the Bible, there's a new king in town, and he doesn't recognize Joseph, basically.
Yeah.
When Coach Drew sees you and he tells you, you're going to be part of this because whatever you do here in 20 years, it's going to matter. How do you believe something like that?
I wish I could go back. I've told Coach Drew this multiple times. Biggest regret I have is not believing in him more right at the beginning and not being a better leader for him and the team, because I think it was a lot of false effort, a lot of false leadership, trying to maybe show just enough to where, it looks like I'm on board, but really I'm mad and miserable and upset. And when he came in he was 32 years old, so much energy, so much hope. And everything he was saying was good and right on the money. And most of the time, I've told teams this, like, you are a part of something bigger than yourself. You are a part of building not just a foundation, but also like you're helping future success for future players. Like, that's a great thing to be a part of. But for me, it wasn't enough at that point. Like, I almost felt like, it's time for my success, my time. Like, I've been waiting. We made the NIT my freshman year. We got beat bad for 2 years, but we're getting better. And now this is supposed to be it, where we're top 25. We're making the jump for the coach that I wanted to play for, that I came there for. So, and all these things, and the fact that I think, I really had lived a charmed life up to that point. And I think that also helped with this belief that, God's making everything I want happen. He's really got my back. And because parents were together, never had gone through much tragedy in my life, and no severe injuries or anything as a player out of all those reps that I had and was playing at a level way above really what physically I should have been playing. So it just seemed like everything. And then this really rocked my that false ideology I had, but then also my trust. And I've always taught to trust my coaches. And I ask that trust from my players. Right, first day, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to ask that you trust me. Over time, I'll earn it. But I'm going to ask that you trust me up front. I just couldn't do that with Coach Drew. And so when he's asking me to do some things early on that no coach had really ever asked, I was the kind of guy, like, just give me the workout. I'm going to go attack this thing. You don't have to mess with me anymore. And everybody else will watch how hard I'm working, and they'll work harder. Like that it was more of that leader by example piece that I think I excelled in. He wanted me to be more of this, hey, you need to get these other guys on board with what we're trying to do. You need to work out harder. Like, first, don't question my work ethic. Like, that's what I'm known for. You need to do this and that. And I was just so resistant to it. And then the off-court habits that I had really just thrown myself into in a matter of 2 months, that was really taking a toll also.
Who knew at that time? Anybody on the team, anybody on the coach, your family, or was that sort of the separate life? Yeah,
it was kind of funny. My first 3 years, I didn't hang out with my teammates a ton. My freshman year, I did a little bit. Sophomore, junior year, I didn't. It ended up keeping me out of the police investigation in a pretty big way. Like, they brought me in one time to give my statement of what I knew. And I told them, guys, I don't really hang out with them outside of here. I don't know much. Here are a couple rumors. Here's some things. They're like, okay, sign your, at the bottom and thank you. So that was really the only time I'd ever had to be a part of it. But yet I still, we can talk about this too, is this campus that I loved. I mean, they looked at us differently at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Those of us that were left over were looked as if we were the ones that had done it. We were a part of it. I'm like, guys, I've been here. Why all of a sudden do you think that I'm different, or are you treating me differently? The unique thing that happened, though, was, and I think it ended up making our team as strong as it became, was throughout that we were really all we had. I didn't have this friend group that I once had, because I just felt like anytime I was around other people, it was, what do you know? What can you tell us? Like, they just wanted to talk about that, or I felt like they were, either whether it was true or not, I felt like they were looking at me differently. So it was really more me and my teammates and us just finding any type of joy, fun, peace that we could outside of basketball. And unfortunately, a lot of it was destructive and it was not positive, but we were together. And so we kind of created more of this family feeling with our team that I really hadn't had my first 3 years.
So it seems like the approach of Coach Drew and Coach Bliss was different, where Coach Bliss was more, like you said, the me, but I believe in more the biblical sense and context. Actually, in our tradition, we say, Or la goyim, a light unto the nations. Is this what you had to say about this?
And going into my senior year, I thought, you know what, God, if this is what's going to happen, if you're going to allow this to happen, well, then I'm going to have as much fun as I can, do whatever I can to laugh and to have peace and to forget this situation that I'm in. You know what? I never asked this question. I never asked, Lord, this is a difficult time. What can I learn through this situation? How can I be a light to others during this time? I just became so selfish.
So it seems like Coach Drew made you ask that question, even though not explicitly. Like, Matt, you are going to be a light unto others 20 years down the road, right? And how do you now use perhaps that motivation that he did into coaching high school kids that might want to play at Baylor one day today?
Well, the meme monster is inside all of us. And
it's so funny you say that, because I'll give you the biblical term, or the rabbinic term we call the Yetzer Hara. It's the evil inclination. And I'm reading a lot of these sports books right now, and actually Miss Val, who's the Hall of Fame gymnastics coach at UCLA, she speaks a lot about this as well, that how do you suppress that and how do you raise that good inclination? But I love the meme monster terminology.
It's the beautiful part of team sports, is that if you want to win and you want to be your best, you have to suppress that and you have to try to build up others. And I think I did excel in that. You mentioned the difference between Coach Bliss and Coach Drew. Well, their approaches were just, I can't imagine just more opposite characters than those two. Coach Bliss' first meeting was, I'm not your friend. You have enough friends. I'm going to coach you in basketball. I'm going to teach you basketball. And line drawn, right there. Coach Drew comes in, guys, listen, I love you. I care about you. And I'm going to be here with you through all this. So, it was more of like, I was used to the old way of not your friend, don't Coach Bliss always had a little bit of a wall up. Even the time that I spent with him one-on-one, never felt like I really got to know him. But then it was also practices, and it was our style. Like with Bliss, to me, it was serious basketball. Like we're a Division I legit team with high aspirations. Then all of a sudden you fast forward, going into my senior year now, before even games or practices begin, we were told you can't play in postseason. So it's like, hypothetically, if we had been really good, we wouldn't have been able to play. No Big 12 tournament, no NCAA tournament. That's like you and I going to work and being told we're not going to get paid. Well, I'm probably going to stay home. I may come in for half the time then, that's just how we feel. So that all of that. And then he was smiling and he was joyful and energetic, and it just all good things. And you know what's funny is he was on the cutting edge, I feel like, of really what modern coaching is now, which is we're going to have fun. Players, you're allowed to smile. We're going to hug each other. We're going to say these things. And, now it's how I coach, and it's how a lot of people do, and the old school way of, you're going to, like what he says in Hoosiers, my practices are not meant for your enjoyment. That doesn't fly anymore.
Interesting. And do you see that as a positive in the culture of basketball? And do you think it still allows kids to reach their potential?
Oh, I think it allows them to reach even higher, because it's more, they're doing things extrinsically now because they want to compete. They enjoy being there. You and I, when we enjoy what we're doing, it's time flies by. This isn't work. Like what we're doing, like this is fun. And it's more like that now, where I feel like you can get even more out of your players because of that feeling, rather than did I say extrinsic before? It's more intrinsic now. That's what I meant.
Nice.
It's inside of them. Extrinsic is Coach Bliss's style. Do this or else I will run you into the ground, or else you will not play, or you won't have a scholarship. Yeah, you can get people to do things that way for a little bit, but then at some point, that's what Bobby Knight ran into. Is
thinking that in my head, but didn't want to say it out loud.
Yeah, players started tuning them out. Players started saying, you know what? I'm out of here. When people started leaving Indiana, those great players started leaving Indiana. That's when people started to look in a little bit more. And so it's such a better way of doing it. And you asked about the me monster and being a light at Grapevine Faith. That's our mission. Our mission is to be a light in the basketball world, not in just the way that we play, but in the way that we treat each other, the way that we compete. We try to keep the main thing, which is not basketball. It's how we glorify God with what we say and do. And that's all coming from Coach Drew.
That's amazing that you say that's coming from Coach Drew, even though 2 decades before you didn't necessarily realize that. I want to play this clip. It's my favorite song of all times. It's called One Shining Moment. And this is just a couple of years ago. And I want you to think about 20 years ago and then think about when this happened.
Little history tonight in Indianapolis. Butler. Oh, right in the heart. Coach Drew and Baylor complete college basketball's greatest rebound and rebuild with a championship.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know. You are not wearing a uniform that night, but you were basically wearing a uniform that night. Where were you? How'd that feel? And take us down the parade route when you were invited back to the championship parade.
Yeah, there's 2 times where I've kind of teared up about Baylor basketball. The first was when they made the NCAA tournament the first time. I think it was 5 years after I graduated. I was in my apartment by myself watching Selection Sunday, and I was tearing up. Unfortunately, it was more out of anger. I was frustrated that they were getting to do that and that I didn't get to do that. And, even though Coach Drew, even 5 years before that, had said you're a part of something bigger, it's still it wasn't what I wanted to be a part of. And so it took a long time, and really some life change for me to understand what he was saying, what he was trying to get us to do, understanding what we did actually by sticking around and persevering through that year. And then the second time was watching them. I was sitting in my living room next to my wife, Jana, holding her hand most of the game. And I was terrified at first because we get up 10-0, and usually the team that gets up 10-0 loses because they're looking back at their lead. The other team has this almost they're backed into a corner mentality the whole game. And I don't know what the percentage is, but it's high. And this is from me playing and also coaching. If we get a 10-0, 11-1, something like that, I'll look at my coach and be like, oh man, because it's just hard. It's hard for that team mentally to keep it going
up,
as
yeah.
their lead starts to lose, or once they get down, because then they're that whole like, oh, we were up 10-0. How are we losing? So, and then we go up 20, but they storm back to cut it to 10 before half. And I thought, man, they just have the momentum. But then we come out and we just hit them in the face a few times. With about 5 minutes left, I did allow myself to start to think, like, we're going to do this. Like, I sat there at Coach Drew's press conference, and you've seen the clips now. Like they played it a lot after they won it, where he said, I didn't come to Baylor just to, rebuild anything. I came here to win championships.
Mm-hmm.
Truthfully, at that moment, like, I didn't laugh, but I felt like laughing because like I was sitting next to our team, which was like 5 or 6 guys, and none of us were very good. And like, what championships could you possibly think of winning here? And for him to say it then, that for them to be so good for so long, because they really, the last decade, they've been pretty darn good. But to feel like I'm a small part of that, to be a part of a championship program, I mean, that was the dream, right? Like from the very beginning. It just took much longer and a strange path to get there. And so thankful for him, the vision that he had, and the ability over the years to keep us former players, keep reminding us. That's one thing I've learned from him too. Keep reminding former players that they're a part of current successes. That's a really huge piece.
So you just mentioned your wife, Jana, and when we talk about God's plan and other people's wishes and being a light unto others, it seems like Jana's a pretty big light unto you, and this is how you met.
And I was closed off to anything that God was trying to tell me, and I was in control. I met with a pastor right after my 30th birthday, and I said, I'm angry, and I have questions about how a guy like me my life can be like this. And he said, Matt, you've got to give up control. And I said, I feel like I've done that in the past. He said, no, I mean, really, give up control of your thoughts, your pain, where your happiness is coming from, and really trust in him. And the lady that allowed me to meet with that pastor, we've been married now for 9 or 10 years. God's plan is way bigger and better than our little plans. My plan was just to play college basketball.
Who's Jana? How does she fit in this whole plan?
What's funny is there's no book if I don't meet her, because I had started writing it before. I read a book called you'll like this as a sports guy, The Walk-On: Life at the End of the Bench by Alan Williams.
Nice.
And I was reading this book. It's about this kid that I think Wake Forest he walked on, and it was just his life grinding year to year, staying on the team. And I just really it resonated with me. I was like, this is basically my journey through college basketball, my first 3 years, except I was on scholarship. But you have to retain, you have to keep your scholarship every year. And they even tell you, we are recruiting better players than you, like that, without saying we're trying to recruit over you. That's what they're doing. And because they have to get better, and they need better players than what they currently have. And so, 39 different teammates walked in and out of that door over the 4 years. And somehow I and some of my team, well, I was the only 4-year guy, there that last year. So I had started writing the book because I thought, I'm moving from Pennsylvania to Texas, working my way through a kind of a blue collar type approach to college basketball and remaining. This might be interesting. And then I was like, well, okay, my senior year, I get to that part, and it's like I was around 30 at the time, and there's no ending to this story, because we had 6 players. We were 8-21. Obviously, we hadn't won the national championship yet, so not much had happened. And I was miserable as a 21-year-old. 9 years later, I'm still living the exact same way. And I feel the exact, like, that's a horrible book. Like, it's super depressing. And so I was kind of at this moment of, and I'm not saying like I went to church for that. I was just at rock bottom. And and really asking, like, Lord, is this really what life is supposed to be like? And because I had all this head knowledge from growing up, in church and having faith, but man, I just moved so far away from it. And that day, meeting her, it's kind of a cool thing. I mean, I went into a random church and I threw in a visitor card. I put my name on it. I said, I'm angry and I have questions.
Wow.
Threw it in. Never think, because I grew up in church. I've seen thousands of visitor card offer, guys, hey, fill it out if you're new. I've never done that because I was never been new to a church. Like, I've always gone. And so I did it, not expecting anything. Like, here's the crazy thing, like God moments throughout your life, right? Like, if I don't fill out that card, if I just go and I sit in the back and leave, never meet Jana.
Wow.
I never get to see what God's presence is like in someone else. I mean, I really see that in her, and also the accountability that she brought to my life too, and man, getting plugged in at that church with her, and just crazy life change there.
So you changed the definition of Jamodi from what we talked about, just a matter of doing it, to a different acronym: Joy, attitude, motivation, opportunity, determination, and impact. That is awesome. Tell us about that transformation.
I've been using the term forever, but again, in the last decade of my life, and just trying to grow, closer and closer in my relationship with God, I just felt like that term, just a matter of doing it, like that's not really it. It's good in the moment. Like, I don't want to go work out today. Well, it's Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Just get there and you'll be okay. So I get that part, but it's misleading for kids or for people. Like, when you're going through really tough times, when you have deep struggles, or you're struggling in your faith, it's not just Jamodi. Like, it's not just a matter of switching a light on or off. And anytime, like, these kids, if they have dreams and goals of, I want to be a college player in some sport, it's not just as easy as Jamodi making it happen, or else everybody would do it, but not many people do. And so this idea of what would be a good journey or path, a daily idea of, okay, today I'm going to wake up with joy. I'm going to choose joy. I'm going to choose joy because of what God's done in my life. The fact that he saved me, like, I got that because of that gets to change the path or trajectory of my thoughts every day. I'm going to choose that joy every day. That changes my attitude. It allows me to have an attitude of gratitude, even when things are really tough. I think when you have that attitude of gratitude, then you're allowed to, instead of, you start to look for things to motivate you. I realized as a coach that not everybody wants to be motivated. I thought at first everybody did, but you have a kid say, listen, I don't want to be a college basketball player. That'll rock you. Like, at first you're like, I thought everybody wanted to be that. No. And some people don't want to. They can watch Rocky VI, which isn't the best of the Rockies, but when he talks to his son about, I used to hold you right here. Life is mean and hard and it'll beat you to your knees. Like that, that gets me riled up. Like, I'm ready to attack the day, but some people will watch that and that not everybody wants to be motivated. But I think with joy, having the right attitude, if you're motivated, then everything in your life is an opportunity.
Right.
There are not good moments. There are not bad moments. They're all opportunities for you to be a light to somebody else, to grow, to get out of your comfort zone. Comfort zone is a beautiful place where nothing grows, right? And so, like, if you look for opportunities, then there's going to be brick walls in your path. Randy Pausch said brick walls are there to show how badly you want something. You have to be determined at times. Like, there's days where, I'm busy today. Do I hit my quality time, or do I let it slip by and just do the catch up button on my app, which unfortunately I've done, right? Like on my Bible reading plan. I have to be determined to get those things done that are really, really important to me. And then ultimately the I is we're here to impact others. That me monster, I gotta keep that man down. It's not about me, it's about others. And to me, it's a beautiful, like I said, a step-by-step process to attack every day, to attack your dreams and goals, but to hopefully keep perspective through all those things.
So you're a high school coach in Texas. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Hopefully still at Grapevine Faith Christian School if they'll have me. I mean, I've got a really sweet gig here where I'm at a school that I'm allowed to openly talk about my faith. In fact, we're mandated to have biblical infusion in everything that we're doing. That means even at my silent study hall class that I have, you know, the Bible has to show up there. In practice, if a practice goes by and in some way we can't connect something to their walk, I've missed the boat. You know, what that does too, honestly, I think if I was at a bigger public school where winning is really important, I think Coach Bliss would come back out because he's in there. You know, his way of thinking and that drive and that no nonsense push, there's a part of me that still thinks that way or wants to coach that way. But I think being here where these kids come to faith for the biblical environment, the academics, and third on that list is basketball. I have to keep it there too. And so it's really been a good thing for me. I would love to still be doing that because also we have a fun style of play that I feel like it's kind of like Pat Riley said, there's other ways to do it. We just happen to think our ways is the best. and I think that about how we play here. And then I'm having a ton of fun with the Jamodi podcast, getting to speak with amazing coaches and leaders, learning a ton from them. So I think, Lord willing, I'll be doing exactly the same thing. But if he opens up doors, I'll walk through them.
Well, when you need a rabbi on your next practice, you let me know. You got one here in Los Angeles.
Love it.
We are honored to have Coach Matt Sayman, Grapevine Faith Christian School in Grapevine, Texas, Baylor basketball, author of this amazing book, The Leftovers, Baylor, Betrayal, and Beyond. Matt, it's so great to speak with you, and we look forward to keeping in touch. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an honor. Thank you.